Well, Tara and Bob, I see it's 8 o'clock. Should we get started?
Please do.
We've
Yes.
got a big agenda ahead of us. So I'll say good morning, everyone. I'm Judy Schwank. I am a state senator from Pennsylvania. And in the Commonwealth, I serve as the minority chair of the Ag and Rural Affairs Committee. I co-chair this CSG East committee with my colleague, Representative Carolyn Partridge from Vermont, and we'll be sharing the duties this morning. You know, guys, I wish we were at a breakfast, like eating eggs and all that stuff, like we normally do.
Yeah.
And I know I feel awkward about it, but if you feel like eating, just go ahead and eat. We won't look at you, I promise. But, try to stay engaged. Usually in our first meeting, when we have our conference, the Agriculture Committee, we spend time going around this, the different states and provinces to, kind of touch base on what's been happening in our various districts. What's the legislation? What are the initiatives? What are the controversial things that are going on? So that is one of the things that we will certainly do this morning. And in addition to that, we have a resolution on milk labeling that we will be voting on, and Carolyn will be leading us through that and the state by state, kind of update. And as always, we will be getting our update from Washington, D.C. We're so glad to have Fran here with us, who gives us the lowdown on what is happening there, specifically on agriculture, because we just don't often get that news. I don't know about you, but it's really, really helpful to have Fran on the ground there for us. And also, just to let you know, on Thursday morning, we'll have another session on rural broadband, which will be Thursday, 8 o'clock to 9:30. So put that on your calendar or your schedule if you haven't done that already. I know we talk about rural broadband all the time. I'm looking forward to something actually happening in Pennsylvania, but we'll see, as to what happens. So let's start, first of all, by kind of introducing ourselves, just so, we know who is here. Suzanne, you were first in terms of getting on board. So Representative Smith, just say who you are and where you represent in the state. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Judy. And it's great to see everybody again. I'm Suzanne Smith. I'm a state rep in New Hampshire. I live in a rural town in the central part of the state, and I serve on the Resources, Recreation, and Development Committee, but I'm in a rural area, and I have also served on the Environment and Agriculture Committee too.
Great, great. I'm going to just go around on the screen as I see the tiles. Hollywood Squares here. Representative Postles.
Morning, I am from Delaware. I serve on the Agricultural Committee. I am a farmer. I'm in my third term in the legislature. Delaware is it's a small state, but it's a very agricultural state. The broiler industry being the largest industry agriculturally. And then corn and soybeans to support the feed for that. So that's just a real quick thumbnail of Delaware. And as I said, I've been a farmer for 4 years, so I have that background as well.
Very good. Thank you. Representative Ryan.
Good morning. Good to I'm sorry. Okay.
Go ahead.
Good to see you all. I could tell that Fran had oral surgery because it certainly wasn't cosmetic surgery. And
Oh, snap.
I just want to start off on a good note. I represent a district in the eastern part of Connecticut. I serve on the Environment Committee, which takes care of farming issues in the state of Connecticut. I also serve as a deputy speaker. And I've been a member of this committee for, I think, about 25 or 30 years.
Very good. Thank you. Senator Goby.
Good morning, and thank you. Ann Goby, my district, I have 28 towns that's in Massachusetts, kind of central Mass from the New Hampshire border to the Connecticut border. A lot of farms, and especially Worcester County is the county in Massachusetts with actually the most farms in Massachusetts. This is my 20th year going into the legislature, and this is the first time I haven't served on the Ag Committee. However, I'm still a member of the, we started an agricultural tourism commission that I am on that, and I still remain a member of the 4-H board for Massachusetts. So thank you.
We're glad to have you here. Thanks a lot. MPP Gamari, Goldie?
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. I guess I'm the newest member here today. Serving my first term. I was elected 3 years ago. Election coming up next year. Prior to being elected, I was an international trade lawyer, so represented a lot of farms on import, export, dumping, subsidy matters. The area that I represent in this part of Ontario is very rural, even though I guess the equivalent would be district, is located within the city of Ottawa. The city of Ottawa is very large, and there's a very large agriculture component to it. So I have some of the biggest farms in my area as well. So agriculture and rural affairs has always been a very important part of everything that I do. And so I'm happy to be here.
Great, thank you. Mr. Evans?
Morning, my name is Bill Evans. I'm the Chief of Staff for Senator Judy Schwank. And Senator Schwank, as many of you know, all know, serves as the chair of the Senate Ag Committee for the Democratic Caucus. And at that capacity, I serve as what they call the executive director of the committee here in PA. And what that means is both parties have an executive director, the majority and minority party, and we review the legislation that comes before the committee. We handle anything agriculture, not on behalf of the senator, but also on behalf of the caucus. And it's good to see everyone again today. Thank you.
He's in the room right next door to me. Jay?
Hi, Jay Kahn. I'm a state senator, third term in Cheshire County, southwestern New Hampshire, where Tara Sad is my constituent, and I am a disciple as well. So, so if Tara says I should participate, it's because I've taken an interest in our local farm bureau in Cheshire County, a very active group with both dairy and cattle, and then a large growing local farming community.
Great. Thank you,
Senator Khan represents us well.
Thanks, Tara.
Senator Waters?
Good morning, everybody. It's nice to see you all. Nice to see my New Hampshire colleagues and Tara. I'm Senator David Waters. In my fifth term, I serve near the Seacoast region. Not too many farms in my district, although aquaculture is certainly a fast-growing concern in the saltwater abutting my district in the Great Bay. And I serve on the Energy and Natural Resources Committee, which receives most of the agriculture bills that come over from the House.
Very good, thank you. Maggie?
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name's Maggie O'Neill. I'm a House rep here in Maine. I am in Saco, which is 20 minutes south of Portland. And what else were you saying? Because I had some tech issues. Or anything else by way of introduction?
That's fine, just who you are, and we're happy to have you here.
Thanks, great to be here.
Thank you. So now I'm out of pictures. I do see Destiny Ziders is on. I know who Destiny is. So Destiny, join us.
Good morning. Good morning. I am here.
And you are?
Oh, I'm sorry. I just logged in a second ago. I am Destiny Ziders. I am the executive director for the Pennsylvania House Democrats under Representative Eddie Day Pashinsky.
Very good. Thank you. And who else is there that would like to? Senator Ballweg, do you want to join us? Tell us who you are, who you represent.
Good morning. I'm actually coming to you from Wisconsin. I am the CSG National Chair, and in Wisconsin, I am the Agricultural Chair in the Senate. And there's a resolution I forwarded to you folks that we passed at the Midwest region also. So I thought I would just, since we have a lot in common, I thought I would just listen in today and see what you're all doing out there in the ERC.
Great.
Thank you for
We'll get
asking.
to that resolution in a little while. Let's see. Mr. Russo, Michael? All right, we'll go Carrie quickly.
Hi, I'm Carrie Warner. I'm an assembly member that represents the a district in the eastern part of New York State. I serve on the Agricultural Committee as well as the Rural Resources Committee.
Very good. Thank you. And I see Michael doesn't have any video or mic, so but thank you for joining us. Did I miss anybody here this morning who wants to speak up and say who they are? So what we'll do now is we'll go through the states. Carolyn's going to take over from here. She's really great at doing this, and she'll ask somebody from each state or province to just say a little bit about what's going on. So Carolyn, if you would.
And fantastic. And I have 4 devices going and I don't have all the information I need. So I'm going to rely on Tara and Bob to tell me to just shout out a state and who's here to represent.
Connecticut, Kevin Ryan.
That I knew. So I'm Representative Carolyn Partridge, just by way of an introduction, and I have chaired the House Agriculture and Forestry Committee in Vermont for the last 13 years. I've been in the legislature. This will be my 24th year coming up. So at any rate, why don't we go to Kevin first from Connecticut, and let's hear about any things that your committee you have done in Connecticut to.
You couldn't help yourself, could you? You had to do it.
I know. I mean, when you guys listen to him, you'll see he sounds like he's from Massachusetts, like from the Boston area. So anyway, go ahead, Mr. Ryan, Representative Ryan.
Whatever, whoever you are. Yes.
Yeah.
Thanks, Tara, for your introduction. At least you got the state right. We did do a few things in Connecticut. Obviously, we had a interesting year because we did come back to session in person, though most of our committee meetings were held via Zoom. The only time we entered the Capitol was actually on session days when we were actually kind of segregated. So it made for interesting public hearings, interesting meetings, but were able to pass some bills. Let me just kind of quickly go through them. We kind of gave more support to our agriculture education programs, raising the amount of money that each local high school ag program would get by raising the state contribution from $4,200 to $5,200. We did pass a marijuana bill this year, and when the final bill came out, one of the interesting aspects is the fact that they decided to separate cannabis cultivation from farming, and they separated the definitions in that bill so that the statutory definition of agriculture and farming does not include cannabis cultivation. And like a lot of states, we made a bigger emphasis this year on Connecticut grown, kind of revising how that can be done, requiring more proof about a farm product's point of origin so that things that are labeled Connecticut grown are actually Connecticut grown. And part of that bill was interesting because we also did a new Connecticut Grown for Connecticut Kids grant program. And this was a program to help local schools, as we've been trying to do over the few years, do more farm to school programs, having schools use more locally grown products in their kitchens for their school lunches and other meals that might be provided during the day. We also had a farm viability matching grant program, which was generally used for rural areas. And this bill allowed it to be used for urban areas, trying to get more gardens grown within cities. Also, we allowed for municipalities, groups of municipalities and regional councils of government to apply for money so that they could get money to encourage more farming areas within the municipalities themselves. Our farmers market nutrition programs for the first time allowed for the redemption of vouchers for eggs. It's usually been limited to cheese, milk products. But in this program, we now kind of included eggs, which I found kind of interesting. And we did some more things with hemp, trying to make a distinction between that and the fact that we're having a cannabis bill, and to make some true distinctions so that there's no problems there. And we also tried to help farmers with the anaerobic digestive facilities, trying to make it easier for farmers to license these facilities through our local Department of Environmental Protection, DEP as we call it in this state, so that we just passed some elements to make that whole process easier, so that they would have more success in this state trying to bring that kind of facility into the state. We did a bill on soil health. We developed guidelines for improving and preserving soil health. Our previous law only used to deal with soil erosion, sediment control, but this we're actually looking at more issues dealing with the actual health of the soil. And I think, okay, the other thing we kind of dealt with is Representative Waters was talking about, we did more with aquaculture, helping our Connecticut Seafood Development Council, did more with shellfish restoration programs along our shoreline and Long Island Sound, and also did something with tax assessments for aquaculture property, putting them under the 490 program for tax purposes, which hadn't been done before. And I think those are the main things we did. The only other thing I'm going to probably mention is this summer, because of COVID, I guess, we saw an incredible increase in the number of folks using our farmers markets, a lot more people coming there, both selling products and coming to buy products. I think people were just more comfortable coming to a farmer's market than probably going to a store. So our farmers market saw a great increase in participation as both vendors and consumers attended those facilities on those occasions. And I think that's pretty much what we did in Connecticut.
Thank you so much, Kevin. All right, Delaware is next.
We have Representative Postles from Delaware.
Thank you. Several things that I might highlight. We have had ongoing for a number of years some investment by the state on an annual basis in farmland protection. That has fluctuated a little bit depending on the state budget, but a significant investment in farmland protection did pass this year. One of the continuing challenges that we have, and I suspect others have had as well, is labor in our food processing, particularly most notably the chicken processing, but even in the vegetable processing area, having a readily available supply of labor. It has impacted the production of our plants, and the domino effect of that, of course, is the rest of the economy and even down to producers. So that's something that's been ongoing and to some extent even exists yet today. There's still some influence of that. So that's been something we've really had to deal with, and many businesses, small businesses particularly, have had that. I mean, restaurants, retails, the whole gamut. But as it affects agriculture, it certainly has impacted our producers. Another issue that is affecting agriculture in kind of a longer term, we have been growing growing in terms of people moving into the state. We are close to Washington and Philadelphia and Baltimore, and people have decided they want to get out of the urban areas and either telecommute or retire in Delaware. And that's putting a lot of development pressure on some of our farmland. That's, and not only the farmland, but if you can imagine all the infrastructure issues as well, which has had, implications in terms of roads and sewers and schools and all the services associated with community growth. And the last thing I would mention is hastened or enhanced by the pandemic. There really has been a growth in the farmers market concept. Almost every little town and sizable town has farmers markets now. There really is an interest and a desire to source locally, to know the source of their food and how that whole process goes. And so it's given opportunity to do some ag education and promotion as to what agriculture is and how it, how it's involved in the community and how important it is, particularly as more and more of our people are that are particularly moving in, but even otherwise are getting farther and farther from the farm. So that's an opportunity. I think that kind of hits the high spots.
Thank you so much. Now it is just about, it's 8:21, and I know that Howard Pearl was going to call in. Bob, do you know what the status is with Howard?
Yes, he just texted me and he said it'll be about 8:30 now.
Okay, good enough. All right, so then next we move to Maine.
With Representative Maggie O'Neill.
Great, Maggie, do you want to go ahead?
Thanks, Carolyn. Good to see you online. Last time I saw you, I think, was in Alberta. But...
Yes, yeah, Calgary.
So in Maine, like Connecticut, we were meeting remotely and we were just in session for session days. So it was definitely an adjustment for those little conversations that you have in the hallway and that kind of stuff to get things done. But one cool thing that I found was that more people were able to participate than usual, because in Maine, we're a really big state and you might have to drive 5 hours just to come to the state house. So it was really nice to be able to hear from some people that might not usually come up. So some things that we did during session were the first bullet under food insecurity. We decided to continue no-cost breakfast and lunch that the federal government did during the pandemic to make sure that more students don't go to school hungry. We have a program called the Maine Harvest Bucks program that matches your SNAP benefits dollar for dollar when you're at a farmer's market. And we made another investment in that to make sure that people could take advantage of it, especially now and going forward. I heard someone mention soil health. We had a couple bills around soil carbon storage and more incentives for healthy soil, all voluntary stuff, but just to give farmers opportunities to learn. That was a really popular one. We had a lot of conversations about forest policy and how to line up our forest policy with our climate goals in a way that backs innovation, but is also thinking about the future. As a young person, a young legislator, something I'm always thinking about is that my generation is going to be paying for everything that we don't address going into the future. So it's really important to me as an ag and forestry chair to talk about that stuff. Some other things that we talked about were we invested in land conservation, farmland protection. We're seeing a lot of that, the same kind of thing in Maine, where folks from the city are moving here during COVID and finding that they like it. But farmland's threatened and it's making housing much more expensive for folks in Maine who make small to modest incomes. And a couple other things that we talked about were hemp compliance. In Maine, we've had medical for a long time and recreational, and issues for us were not being able to allow personal plants, because right now 3 plants are allowed. So to have that discrepancy where you can't have a hemp plant, but you could have a plant with THC is just silly. And then, as all of you know, the issue of measuring THC was a big one for farmers. And we also were really concerned about the background checks for farming and how that impacts poor communities and people of color. So we decided to hang back and see what other states are doing. And I'd be curious to hear from all of you to hear what you have done or decided to do on hemp compliance. And the last thing I want to talk about is that as chair this year, I wanted to make sure that we built racial equity into our ag and our land issues. So I had a framing conversation at the beginning of session where we brought in different communities in the state, and we created an optional kind of metric for our work to measure what we're doing and make sure that we're having those conversations going forward so we can do better. So thanks, Carolyn.
Thank you, Maggie. It's so good to see you. Now I got a chat, something in the chat saying that Howard Pearl is on. Is that accurate? We're going to take, Howard is from New Hampshire. We're going to take him out of order because he's delivering stuff.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. Well, I was able to sneak out for a few minutes to throw a coat on, so I at least look presentable.
Oh, stop.
Yeah, it's a busy time at the farm right now for
It
us.
didn't work, Howard. It didn't work.
It didn't work. All right. I can take it back off. Good to see you, Senator. Yeah, it's a busy time at the farm. We do produce farming as well. That's my day job, and chairing the E&A committee has certainly been a really interesting and fun experience for me this past year. So I haven't seen exactly what everyone else put out for their talks. So I guess I'm just going to wing it because I just got on. So I'll discuss a little bit some of the bills that we had in New Hampshire. I think I've only got 3 minutes, right? All right. I can keep it short. Our bills primarily were, we had a few animal agriculture bills in the sense, in fact, most of them I think were mine that I put in that related to dog breeding and things of that nature. We'd had some things that had happened a couple of years ago in the budget that kind of put our smaller breeders in a situation where they were having a hard time to survive. So we went back and corrected some of the unintended consequences of things that had gone through in that budget. In fact, 2 of those bills will be signed this afternoon by the governor, so they'll be into law, which I'm excited about because they're some that we've worked on for quite a long time. One of the things that I always find interesting is the high turnover in the E&A committee, each of the 2-year sessions. And we just had a really great committee this year. We had the challenges of COVID like everyone did with virtual meeting, but the committee really came together and did a great job. Probably our only bill that we really had a lot of tension, perhaps partisan tension, I would say, is we had a bill relating to siting of landfills as it relates to a state park. So the solid waste issue is certainly an issue we're all dealing with, and that will continue on into the future. But that bill did not end up making it through. But from that, there certainly has been a lot of good conversation about how we're siting our landfills and the amount of trash that comes into New Hampshire for landfills from the surrounding states, and what we export. So those conversations will be had. There'll be certainly further work on that issue. One of the other issues that we worked on was raw milk as it pertains to ice cream and frozen yogurt. We had a provision to allow raw milk to be consumed, but not couldn't be made into ice cream or frozen yogurt the way our law with statute was written. So we did get that passed out of the House. That is still in the Senate. There was a concern from Health and Human Services that we're working on getting addressed. And I think we'll get that taken care of in the short term here probably by next January when we reconvene. Well, let's see. Beyond that, we had a few other bills pertaining again to some animal issues and a couple of issue, a couple of bills relating to how we're doing reporting, like from DES and things of that nature. But I would say the good part is that all but one of those bills, well, actually there was two that did not go on our consent calendar. And one of them was because it had a fiscal note. And the other one was because we had didn't have a consensus to get it on there because of the landfill issue. Probably the other major thing that I'll finish with is we established a database for tracking animal registrations, and that ended up going through our budget. Started as a House bill, and we ended up putting it in the budget. So it will give our Commissioner of Agriculture the opportunity to set up a database, which will help him do the things that the previous legislatures have mandated him to do for information tracking as it pertains to the transfer of animals. So I think we're finally giving him the tools he needs to complete what he was supposed to. And I've probably used up my whole 3 minutes with that. So I guess I will wrap up, and thank you for the opportunity to speak with you.
Thank you so much for that report. Now, I know that there are other folks on from New Hampshire, but I'm thinking maybe we should get through all the states and then go back, if we have some time, go back to others who might want to comment from the various states, if that's okay with everybody. Yeah.
I'll be able to stay with you for a few minutes here, and then I've got to run to another meeting, unfortunately.
Okie doke. Well, thanks so much. So we're going to go back into alphabetical order. And next
Carolyn,
up is, yes.
Jay here, just while Howard's here, the one issue, we just started up a committee on meat processing and slaughterhouse. We're just having a backlog with an undercapacity, and that's a regional issue, I would guess. I haven't been connected with the committee, just with the commissioner on the topic. And anyway, it's of concern if Howard had anything to say, but
yeah, thank you. That was one I forgot to mention. We passed a study committee that will be convening, I think it's August 31st. And we'll be looking into that issue because it is a major problem. And you're right, it's not actually, it's more regional. It's the whole entire country, from my understanding. There's certainly an underserved capacity for especially the smaller, I'll call them backyard folks for the lack of a better word, the non-commercial growers of meat and poultry. They're certainly having issues getting appointments in. I mean, I've heard horror stories of they're a year and a half, 2 years out getting an appointment in to get an animal slaughtered. So we're going to take a look at that with this study committee and see if we can make some recommendations on ways that we could improve that. I've had a couple of thoughts, but I'll certainly continuing, education for the folks, the butchers and the meat cutters. That seems to be one of the weak links, is that there just isn't manpower enough in that area. But that's something we'll probably focus on looking at as well. I know Representative Comtois is on, and that was actually her bill. So when she gets an opportunity to speak, I'll let her fill in further on the details on that, because she's also on that committee.
Great, thank you so much. So I'm a little bit conscious of time, and we've heard from 3 or 4 jurisdictions, and we have 13 minutes left, and we have to hear from about 10 more. So, all right. So next up, thank you though very much for that report.
Welcome.
So next up is Massachusetts and Ann Govey. You want to go ahead?
Sure, Carolyn, I will be brief. I just heard food security issues definitely front and center for Massachusetts as well. We did do a round of food insecurity grants to help with some of the supply chain issues. Just to give you an example, that was $36 million in grants to give out, and we had over $200 million in requests. So it was an extremely popular program, and we're hoping to be able to use ARPA funds to start that back up and to put some more money back into that. We are also in the process of doing a farmland inventory to know how much state land is in ag production. For Massachusetts, I know a lot of people don't think about us being as an ag area, but we have over 7,200 farms in Massachusetts, obviously many, many small farms. So we're trying to figure out ways to make sure that we're making the best use of the agricultural land. Locally, one thing that we did pass is that our local boards of health now if an ag issue comes up in their community, they must go to the ag commission of that community for approval before it can be put, before the regulation is passed. Because we had a lot of issues with towns making laws and regulations that really hurt our farmers. And so this was actually a really major win and went into effect January of this year. So I'll stop there because some of the other issues that came up, the regional, the slaughter issues, definitely big in Massachusetts as well. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Anne. Yeah, that's sort of a regional and probably more countrywide problem, actually. Is there anyone here from Maryland?
No.
Okey doke. We've heard from New Hampshire. Is there anyone from New Jersey? My home state. Many moons ago, but all right, not hearing anyone. New York, Carrie.
Carrie, yes.
Carrie, do you want to comment? Carrie, you're breaking. Carrie, could you turn off your video? Maybe that'll help. You are totally breaking up. Try it now.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, we cannot really hear you. You're totally breaking up. No, I don't know if you can hear us.
How's that?
Say again.
Is that better?
That is better. It's not great.
How's that? Is that better?
Yes, yes, yes. What, did you move to the remote corner of your house or something?
I'll try. I'm going to log in from my computer. Can you circle back to me?
Sure, we'll do that.
Okay.
Okay.
So we passed the.
All right. Maybe you'd like to mute yourself while you're doing that. I don't know if I have the power to mute you, but there you go. All right. Next up, Ontario, Goldie Kamari. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So I'll try to keep it short so we can get to everyone here. So in terms of agriculture, recently we made a really big announcement in joint partnership with the federal government to bring a reliable broadband to areas across Ontario that don't have reliable broadband. So that was very big and historic announcement in terms of infrastructure and internet. So that's great news for rural communities. Obviously, the pandemic has been difficult for everyone, and especially for the agriculture sector, because, with the fact that restaurants and everything were closed, obviously that put some strains on the food supply chain and food production. So some of the programs that we've implemented due to COVID has been supporting mental health for farming in rural communities. So we have specific programs that are catered to provide mental health supports for people in the agriculture and rural sector. We've also been dealing with a drought here in Ontario. So although we do have programs to support farmers through this, we are providing additional drought support, obviously, because of the way things have gone the past few years. It's important to make sure that our agriculture sector is thriving. Some of the other things we're doing is we're investing in agri-food research to strengthen agri-food production in our sector. We're also providing funding for Ontario food and beverage processors during COVID to help maintain the integrity and security of the food supply chain. We're also providing, again, more emergency support for Northwestern Ontario farmers dealing with the drought. And one thing that we're doing as well is we're supporting wineries, cideries, and agritourism industry with the Relief Initiative. Obviously, tourism has been one of the biggest sectors that have been hit by COVID. And for a lot of tourism industries, for example, in my riding, a lot of farms also act as tourism centers, really, because people will drive out, whether it's for a sugar shack, going maple syrup, A lot of farms have, gorgeous venues for, weddings or large events. So obviously all of that was not happening the past year or so. Same thing with wineries, right? People visiting wineries and getting tours and all that. So now that we're slowly reopening the economy, we're in stage 3 right now, which is good news. Our vaccination rates, I believe, over almost 80% of people in Ontario 12 and up have received their first dose, and over 70% of people in Ontario 12 and up have received their second dose. So our vaccination rates are looking pretty good. We're hoping to get to that 90% or above level. But yeah, that's some of what we are doing in the agriculture industry to support the sector and to make sure that the economy moves forward. Just a quick note, it was interesting hearing about what's happening, I believe it was in Connecticut with cannabis growing. So I just wanted to say that that's really interesting, because here in Canada, cannabis production is actually regulated by the federal government, and it would be regulated under the Ministry of Health, because it all kind of goes through Health Canada. So it's just interesting seeing how different jurisdictions are dealing with cannabis production. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Goldie. We really appreciate you being here. All right, next up, is Carrie back? Did Carrie get to call in?
I am back. Can you hear me now?
Perfect.
Fantastic. Thank you. I'm sorry about that. So in New York this year, we passed our legalization of marijuana bill, and we anticipate that about 18 months from now, we will have our dispensaries open and our first crop ready to sell. So we're very excited about this as a step forward in a lot of different ways, but as another agricultural crop, it's an important element to that. Although I have to say, with a certain shyness, that my constituents have told me for years that in my district we grow the best marijuana in New York State, so legal or not legal. We also added the New York Grown and Certified program is a branding program that has proven to be very successful in New York. And this year we added plant and animal-based fiber to that initiative, and and certainly the fiber farmers, which is a growing sector in our state. Actually, historically it's been an important sector and is now regrowing. Are very excited about that. Our dairy farms continue to struggle with the low cost of milk, and I'm eager to be supportive of the milk labeling resolution that we're going to pass. We in the face of the pandemic, the governor and the agriculture commissioner, Commissioner Ball, established something we called Nourish New York, which was a program to connect our farmers with the food pantries and soup kitchens, particularly in the urban areas where there was a sudden and tremendous expansion in food insecurity, as well as a reduction in the restaurant market. And we put $50 million into this during the pandemic, and it was wildly successful from everybody's perspective. So in this year's budget, which we passed beginning with the fiscal year beginning April 1, we formalized this as a non-emergency program. We're doing it on a regular basis with $25 million to continue to fund the Nourish New York program that pays the farmers full market price for their product and gets it into the food pantries and soup kitchens in places that need it. And it was born in a crisis, but has proven to have some real longevity. So we're excited about that. We passed the largest agriculture budget in recent memory in New York State, funding all of our commodity products at or above where they were before, growing our Farm Viability Institute, our farmland conservation efforts, as well as expanding ag education funding. So New York's strong, gaining in strength in agriculture, and we look forward to seeing our nationwide rankings in various commodities increase over the coming years as a result.
Thank you, Carrie. Really appreciate that. All right, next up is Pennsylvania, and Judy, I don't know whether you or Destiny want to do it, but why don't you start off, Judy?
Yeah, why don't I jump in quickly? Just a few things. Yes, we have been in session, both remotely and in person. So things have been happening in the Commonwealth. First thing I'd like to tell you, I think I reported a few years ago, the state actually commissioned a report on agriculture in the Commonwealth. What does it mean in terms of the economy, jobs, and where do we go from here? And so that was done in 2018. We did another update to that in 2021, and the changes are remarkable. Where we see big growth is landscaping, as well as in forest products. Forest products are actually Pennsylvania's #1 export, and a significant part of the ag economy, believe it or not. The other thing is, I had told you before, we had passed a Pennsylvania Farm Bill, the first, I think, in the nation like that. We've done it again. This, I believe, is the third year, and this second year. And this time we have funded it at about $13.6 million. There's all sorts of programs within that, a Center for Livestock Excellence. We're looking at emergency funding for issues that may crop up, like swine flu or some kind of virus or some disease that will devastate our agriculture industry. Meat processing funding for that. A business development center trying also to encourage youth to participate in agriculture more funding for conservation initiatives. There's a whole host of programs, a specialty crop block grant that funds everything from hemp to hops in terms of initiatives that individual farmers or research institutions like Rodale could qualify for. So that's definitely, I think, a positive thing. In terms of legislation, we finally passed a bill on agritourism. I remember the CSG workshop that we had in Providence, Rhode Island. That was very helpful to me when we looked at this legislation. Kind of got bogged down because what happened was everybody was trying to pile on liability for all of the issues created out of COVID. For example, nursing homes and different industries. So the whole thing kind of collapsed on itself. Finally, we were able to separate out the agritourism issue, get that passed. Another thing that we passed was a bill that I was a prime sponsor on, and that was to extend the time for freshness for Pennsylvania milk. This will really help our processors as well as our dairy farmers. We weren't competitive with milk coming in out of state because that milk had a longer fresh by date on it than Pennsylvania milk did. So we were able to come more in line with what most other states already are. So when consumers go to the store and look at milk, they can look at a local dairy and see that it's just as fresh as stuff that might be coming from out of state that looks like, just because it has a longer date of period of time for freshness. So there's that. And then finally, tomorrow, Bill Evans and I will be attending a ceremony with our Secretary of Agriculture, Russ Redding, in the county next to us, celebrating 600,000 acres preserved of farmland in the Commonwealth. So we're working hard to keep our #1 ranking in the US in terms of farmland preservation. It's been a very successful program, and I'll be happy to participate in that. So that's what I would tell you from the Commonwealth.
Great, Judy. Thank you so much. I'm going to be moving kind of quickly through here. Is there anyone here from Puerto Rico? I'm not seeing any hands. Is there anyone from Prince Edward Island? Just a beautiful agricultural place. If you get to go there, it's fabulous. I'm not seeing a hand. Quebec, I see Sylvain Levesque is here. Oui.
Bonjour.
Bonjour, Sylvain.
Hello, everyone. I'm very proud to be with you and speaking with you all, even though we can't yet properly shake hands and have informal session. Beside the obvious impact that COVID-19 had on rural communities, on all of us. A few other new items have caught attention this past year in terms of agriculture and rural development in Quebec. Regarding legislation, no major bill was passed on the topic except for Bill 77, which reform and modernize the Institut de Technologie Agroalimentaire du Québec, which is our agri-food technology institute that has 2 campuses located in rural region of Quebec. In addition to this, a major initiative that was launched by Quebec Agriculture Minister André Lamontagne in 2020 gained more traction. The initiative called Plan d'agriculture durable 2020-2030 on Sustainable Agriculture Plan 2020-2030 aim, amongst other things, to cut pesticide use by 15% by 2030. It's also aimed to improve soil conservation, fertilizing material management, water management, and biodiversity. Excuse me. To be brought to fruition, the plan has a budget of 125 million Canadian for the first 5 years, which will mostly be used in direct financial help to farmers to improve their practice. In research and development and in education, last June, Minister Lamontagne launched the pilot project, which a number of local farming enterprise, which will help map out how the grants will be distributed to put the good use. Another more general observation on agriculture in Quebec is that recent years, greenhouse cultivation has been booming in the extent as its industry now aims to double its production by 2025. In the current context of climate change and increasing demand for locally grown food, greenhouse cultivation seems to be a very interesting avenue. For instance, the government of Quebec recently loaned 30 million Canadian dollars to a major producer near Quebec City, my own place where I live, who will in turn build in 15-hectare greenhouse that will work year-long, creating 150 jobs. Thank you very much, everyone, and I'm now eager to hear what has been happening in my remaining colleagues' states and provinces. Thank you very much.
Oh, merci, Sylvain. All right, is there anyone here from the Virgin Islands? I don't think so. Okay, I'm going to go through Vermont very quickly. We did a bunch of things. We solved the composting with chickens problem that's been going on for years. Nobody wanted to handle it. A&R didn't want it, even though food residuals are not feed by definition, long-standing thing. And with our universal recycling law, we're no longer allowed to put food residuals into the waste stream. So that got fixed, and the Agency of Ag is taking that on. Thank you. We appreciate that. We created an Ag Innovation Board. We combined a bunch of things like the Vermont Pesticide Advisory Council and our seed panel. We had created a seed panel, like, oh gosh, a couple of 3 years ago, that would review any genetically engineered product that was going to be sold in the state of Vermont. It was mostly meant to address the dicamba situation. I think a lot of you are familiar with what's happened with dicamba and its volatilization and killing non-dicamba resistant crops. In Vermont, there was concern about overspray with dicamba in cornfields, and the fact that if there was contamination, it could kill orchards, it could kill hardwood stands, and vineyards, vineyard plants. So we passed that. It's also going to look at how we can reduce the use of pesticides and agricultural plastics, as well as a plethora of other things. We expanded the sale of raw milk to, thank you, New Hampshire, for being a leader here. We've expanded the sale of raw milk to retail stores and CSAs, not products, just the milk. We passed a limited liability for agritourism to protect our agritourism company facilities for inherent risk. We also have expanded support for our payment for ecosystem services. By the way, tomorrow between 2 and 3, there's going to be the Energy Committee is going to do a panel from 2 to 3. I'm moderating that because we really want to take a strong look at that. In Vermont, we've more focused on the forestry end of it. My committee is agriculture and forestry, but we're also looking to expand it to agriculture. We have dedicated at least $500,000 for processors for on-farm slaughter. And as a sheep farmer and someone who sells lamb, I'm really thankful for that, because I just made an appointment maybe 2-3 months ago for next April. So it's really that problem seems to be pretty universal. And then the final thing I'll mention, we haven't passed legislation on this. However, we are looking at a regional food system with other New England states. It's been researched not so much in my committee, but there are a group of folks, Ellen Kaler, you're probably familiar with her work with the Farm to Plate project and Working Lands, and she's presented before. So anyway, I'm going to wrap it up there. We're a little over time. And what I think we should do right now is move on to our resolution on truth in labeling, which has to do with labeling things like almond beverage. Now there are a million of them: soy beverage, oat beverage, you name it, and labeling that as milk. And I know in Vermont we have a law against that. However, we don't have the resources to enforce. As we researched this in my committee over the years, we know that Canada labels properly. They name it almond beverage, etc. And this is a resolution that was passed by the Midwest district, and we would like to know if you all would be willing to support this. It was sent out. Hopefully you've had a chance to review it. It's relatively short, and I think what I'll do is I will read through it quickly, if that's okay with everybody. So it's whereas a large percentage of the agricultural region of the northeastern United States and Canada is built on animal products, and whereas consumer research has shown that a large percentage of consumers are not able to differentiate between plant-based meats and cheeses and animal-based, and whereas truth in food labeling laws support the Northeast's agricultural economy and alleviate consumer confusion, and whereas to sell in international markets, the European Court of Justice mandates that the terms milk, butter, cheese, and yogurt cannot be used for non-dairy products, and whereas the 2018 congressional spending bill directed the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, FDA, to enforce dairy labeling regulations, and whereas Senate Bill 1346 is a bipartisan bill currently in the U.S. Congress that would direct the FDA to enforce existing regulations that define dairy products as lacteal secretions. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the ERC urges members of Congress to pass, excuse me, SB 1346, and be it further resolved that the ERC urges state and provincial legislatures to support truth in food labeling measures in their own states, and be it further resolved that this resolution be submitted to appropriate state, federal, and provincial officers. So at this moment, I would accept a motion to approve, and then a second, and then we can have discussion. So do I have a motion to approve the resolution?
So
I'll
moved.
move it.
Second.
Okay, Judy moved and David seconded. Is there any discussion? I really wish we had the time to show that cute video of an almond farmer, almond milking farmer. It's really, I go to YouTube, it's hilarious. Very well done. Any comments? Yes, Fran. You're muted, Fran.
Sorry, everyone.
No worries.
Just so everyone knows, this resolution shouldn't be necessary, but it is. There is a long existing standard of identity for milk at FDA. They just refuse to enforce it.
Yep.
This resolution is supported by pretty much everyone in the dairy industry, and I don't need to tell you which groups don't like it. But it's one of those resolutions trying to get the agencies, resolutions. We're trying to pass law to make the agency do what they should be doing, which is very, very upsetting. But anyway, thank you for the resolution.
Right. Yeah. Thanks, Fran. I know that as I said, it's law in Vermont that milk is the lacteal secretion. I think it's of hooved animals, and they lay it out. But the Agency of Ag, Food and Markets just does not have the resources to go out and, change things. So any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by unmuting and saying aye.
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 Aye. All right. Any opposed, please say nay. All right, motion carries. Thank you all so very much. So now, I think we turn to Fran, and Fran, I'm sorry, we're running a little late, but we really want to hear what you have to say about what's going on in Washington. Thank you so much for being here.
Okay, I think I'm unmuted. Yes, and it's great to see all you, even though it's Zoom. Anyway, from down here in DC, just quickly, some things that are happening. One, we're under attack from oak mites. I don't know if you have them in your area, but the cicadas left a present for us. So everybody's got oak mite bites if you go outside.
Oh,
Never heard.
Lordy.
Oh, they're terrible.
What's an oak mite?
Well, they're these little bugs that eat off the laid eggs of the cicada after they died, I guess, after 17 years. And they fall on everybody, and people think they have bed bugs or whatever, but they're these little mites that bite them all over the place. So,
oh Lord.
So all you people north of cicada land are lucky that you didn't have this. So anyway, just another quick update in DC as far as access. We are taking steps backwards. DC has now gone to total masks indoors, and Capitol Hill is still pretty much a lockdown 1 square mile. Some members are there, some staff are there, but it's most of official DC is still a remote island. I say that because I tell everybody else there's really no reason coming here to see people. You have a better chance of seeing your senators and House members at home than you do here. So it's been a very, very busy year. We have, since we've last talked, we in Washington and Congress have have passed, and lots of bills with lots of money. The problem has been and will continue to be, how is it best to get those funds to the people that need those funds? And that has been compounded by the remoteness of the agency's staff as well, in the different departments. But we are learning, we have learned a lot. The departments have learned a lot on how to administer some of these emergency programs over the last year, and hopefully they will be getting better. I mean, we had a lot to learn on how to better improve our school lunch and our school breakfast distribution, our food box distribution, but they're getting better. As for current pieces of legislation, the big thing, of course, was the Senate passing the bipartisan infrastructure bill right before they recessed. That was a $1 trillion piece of legislation that has now gone over to the House for their consideration. Within that Senate bill, there are several things that I think are very important to us, and primarily that we have worked on, and I like to think have led the way as a region. One is the broadband provision. Broadband has become one of the biggest parts of infrastructure today. And in the Senate passed bill, there's almost $43 billion of funding for broadband. Now, of course, this still has to work through the House and ultimately to the president, but I'm very confident in whatever infrastructure bill reaches the president, it will be in that $40+ billion range for broadband funding. The other important thing, in my opinion, in that Senate bill that is very important, and maybe we will hear more about this on Thursday, but what the Senate language in broadband does is it directs the funding not to be administered by the FCC. The funding is directed to be administered by the Department of Commerce, specifically through, and I just don't like to use acronyms all the time, so I'm going to give you the official name, through the National Telecommunications and Information Administration of Commerce. And that funding is to be distributed to the states by Commerce, and then the states are going to decide how those funds are used through grants, which is something we've advocated for a long time, that you on the ground can tell better how to distribute these funds and make sure they're used So this is one provision that I hope that we will ultimately see in the final infrastructure bill. I will tell you that there are forces that don't want this language at all. They're calling it uncompetitive. Matter of fact, anytime the states are allowed to decide how the funds are used, the forces come out here in town that said that is uncompetitive practices. Less competitive system, I should say appropriately. So anyway, that's one thing I'll be working on, making sure to watch that as we move forward. The other thing in that infrastructure bill, besides basically the areas of transportation, roads and bridges, are some issues that worked on very closely. One was to make sure that on the hours of service for trucking, that there is an additional 150 miles on the tail end for livestock and bees, which means by the time you reach your hour of service on your trucking, if you're 150 miles still out from your final destination, you're carrying livestock or bees or fish, you can continue on to that designation. The other was the effort to have the liability insurance on your trucks, commercial trucks that haul agricultural products, increased from $750,000 to $2 million per vehicle. We were able to keep that out of the bill as well. And also one other thing is, in the Senate bill, we were able to get a pilot program in there, the agricultural folks, to look at commercial trucking licenses under the age of 21. We're having very big problems. I'm not so sure if we are, but across the country, in finding drivers for agricultural vehicles that for commercial licenses, which requires 21-year-old age on it. So that had passed the Senate, and that bill has now gone to the House. The other bill that the Senate passed right before they left was the budget framework. That is a budget framework for a $3.5 trillion budget. And so that has also gone to the House before the Senate left. The Senate is left and will not return till September 7th. The House had left and was planning to be out until about September 20th. But now the Speaker has called them back. They will be in next week. And they are planning, at least at this time, the plan is for them to pass a rule in the House, and that rule will include the budget resolution framework, voting rights, and infrastructure. After the rule, the Speaker plans at this time to have votes in the House on the budget framework and on the voting rights bill, but not infrastructure. She is planning on that and sticking so far to her plan of passing the budget reconciliation prior to taking up the infrastructure in the House. A statement that has been released this morning came off of a meeting that she had with her staff yesterday, and of course it was leaked, I'm sure on purpose. And her comment was, "This is no time for amateur hour." And so she has a 3-vote margin, 3 votes. And you have probably seen in the press where there are 9 moderate Democrats who have said that they want the infrastructure bill voted on first in the House. There's at least that many progressive members of her caucus that don't. So she is walking a very, very tough line with a 3-vote margin. But that's where we're sitting right now. And so it could be a very, very interesting September. As far as funding the government, we're right on track. The House Appropriations Committees and subcommittees have passed their bills, as have the Senate, and they just have to take them to the floor. Unfortunately, at this time, I think we'll be looking at a continuing resolution of some sort, because the Senate, that's what they like to do. And they may possibly roll debt limit into that as well, but it's hard to tell. As far as a couple of the issues that were brought up, and Carolyn, yell at me if I'm getting close to my time, okay? Couple of the issues.
You're good, Fran.
Okay.
You got time.
Okay, a couple of the issues that were brought up today by different representatives are being talked about, being addressed by executive order by the president, and some decisions that are going on at USDA. One of this is this situation we find ourselves in on slaughter capacity. It is a problem across the country for a lot of reasons. Of course, one is the drought, which is from sea to shining sea. We have drought here. There's drought all through the West. In the West, they don't even have pasture to winter their livestock, let alone feed them. So you're seeing a lot of animals headed towards the market. And so there's a choke point at large, even our large capacity plants, which are running at least 2 times a day, 2 shifts, some are more. They are having the same issues that were described by some of us. They have severe, because of COVID and other reasons, severe labor problems. They cannot find enough labor to run the plants. So what is the solution? The department and the president, through executive order, is looking at some type of help to fund some alternative smaller plants. The problem is smaller plants, as you all know, because the margin on capacity, a margin on slaughter is so narrow, that there's a reason that people don't invest a lot of money into it. So you have to look at some kind of help from the federal side and the state side. So I'm sure that's what you'll be looking at, as well as the federal government. The same with how to market the product. So USDA has done that. The secretary has made some statements on this issue. They are aware of it. I don't think they know the answers at this point, but they know they have a problem. So that's one of the issues that has come up. The other, as far as food security, the department is working overtime to try to use the lessons that they learned through COVID or COVID-2, whatever we're in now, on how to better use our feeding programs, our SNAP programs, our school lunch programs, to make sure that our folks in need are fed, and that we can use these facilities. One thing we found from COVID is that these facilities can be used year round, instead of just every 9 months or whatever. So the department is committed, particularly in the area of SNAP and food security. I think I saw the other day our largest appropriation of SNAP is being proposed. So that is an area that I think, if it's an area that you're concerned in and work in, I think you're going to find the department, the USDA, very helpful, and try to help you make sure that your constituents' needs are served. Okay. The other big thing too, of course, is the new census data that's come out recently, of what we're finding from the census data, and we're going to see more and more. Probably the biggest takeaway from that is, and it's not good news, rural America continues to shrink nationwide. That means that our congressional districts that were rural or quasi-rural are going to become less that way and more urban, suburban, or exurb. And this will have an effect on the makeup of particularly the House here in Washington. And it will just stress the importance of the agricultural community to work in coalition and together, and to try to solve our differences amongst ourselves, because before this ever-changing new environment in Washington, if we go divided, we won't have any chance at all. And I assume you will probably see some of that also in your state legislatures, but it's going to start to be very apparent here in DC over the next several elections. Labor, I think I touched on this. Ag labor continues to be a big problem. The House of Representatives has passed a ag labor bill, which is supported by the majority of all agriculture, and including the American Farm Bureau and the Farm Workers Union. It's been passed bipartisanly in the House, and it sits in the Senate. We can't seem to get any movement. Part of that is a 60 vote margin issue, but it is continuing to be one of the biggest limiting forces in agriculture in the country. More than anything, more than price, it's labor. I mean, it doesn't matter what your product costs if you can't get it out. or what you get for it. And so this labor issue is continuing and will continue. And in my opinion, will get stronger and stronger. And so hopefully we will be able to find some resolution. I am very concerned that if we don't do something soon, we will go into another election cycle and we'll be back. And as I like to remind everybody, I was involved in the last labor bill that successfully passed the Congress and signed by the president, and that was 36 years ago. We have not had a labor bill in 36 years in the United States. And so we need to continue to work on that and see where we can go. But it is, it's going to affect, and every year that goes by, it is going to affect more and more. And the COVID situation just made it continuously worse because you can't find labor. It's very, very difficult, even if you're paying them way beyond the prevailing wage. So I think probably with that, I should answer any questions everybody might have. It's something I missed, which that could easily happen.
Any questions for Fran? Judy, you've got your hand up. Go ahead.
I do. Thanks, Fran. I always appreciate this update. So what's happening on hemp? Where are we going in terms of the feds, FDA, and so forth, and marijuana?
Well, unfortunately, what I keep seeing is this. We've been there before, but all of the states are going to have all their separate laws, and then eventually the feds are going to say, well, we can't have this, and they'll come in and do one. Right now there's a strong movement, and I think there is a big push. The leader in the Senate from New York, I mean, they want to get ahead of this because they see it coming, but they've been caught up in dealing with so many of these other issues that I talked about. But I think the pressure, Judy, is going to come that eventually it'll be done. The biggest problem we've got is you can understand there, and you probably get it in your state levels, is from law enforcement is where the biggest, and lack of a immediate test, which is what I hear all the time. It'd be interesting, and there's a lot of people looking, and I saw we have two of our members from Canada. There's a lot of people looking at the Canadian situation and how that works, because they went national, across the country, and so a lot of our folks here are looking at that and looking how the Canadians are dealing with a national program. There are new organizations popping up here in DC every day. Are getting stronger. So there's a whole lot more political clout behind it than there ever was, particularly on, I don't like to get them all confused because everybody puts them all under an umbrella. But you got the CDB people, the cannabis, marijuana people, they're all different sort of group. They all want legalizations or provisions by FDA. But they have different means. And I don't think we'll ever sort it out. I mean, if not, we're going to end up with a very, very system, very similar to our alcohol beverage system in the US, where we have a federal law and then 50 individual regulations. There are 50 states that regulate it differently. So that's all I can say on that at this point.
Thank you.
And Fran, as a follow-up to that, one of the challenges in Vermont, and I think many of the northeastern states that grow hemp, that allow for the cultivation of hemp, there's that 0.3% THC level, which was sort of honestly was a number that was just sort of pulled out of the air.
Arbitrary.
And so depending on when the hemp is tested, what the weather conditions are, et cetera, you could be over that 0.3% limit. And I'm wondering if they're doing anything to kind of address that problem.
Short answer is I do not think so. I've heard some discussion. I've heard a lot of discussion that the 3.5 is arbitrary and not based on much of anything. I've heard some discussion that there should be a range. I've also heard discussion that it shouldn't be destroyed just because it, maybe it could be put to some use.
Right.
So there's some salvage value to the producer.
Right.
Those are all I know, but no more of what's driving this wagon is recreational use.
Mm-hmm.
That's because that's where the money is.
Right. Yeah. Interesting. Well, Vermont has it all now.
Who regulates it all in Vermont?
Well, we're working on the adult use cannabis right now. There's a board or a commission that is working out the details of that. Right now, you can't go to a retail store and buy recreational or adult use cannabis in Vermont. You can, however, cross the border into Massachusetts and buy it.
Yeah.
So they're working out those details, but we've had medical marijuana. You can grow up to 6 plants, 2 adults and 4 immature plants, and we wanted that to stay in place for folks who use it medicinally. They make their own stuff. So at any rate, I was just curious if there was any movement on the hemp, because that is actually pretty huge for Vermont.
No, but it's, it's, I think it's something that we can push. I mean, the issue of hemp, I think we can move us and other regions that are concerned about it. But it's going to take that because of the resources from the industries are being used for commercial product.
Yeah.
I mean, that's where they want to go.
Yeah.
Whether that be CBD, did I say that right? Oils.
It's CBD.
Yeah.
It's CBD.
Yeah.
But there are other things like CBG and CBN. CBN is very good for folks who have insomnia, use it for sleeping.
Yeah. I mean, it's like and the big, we've seen this, right? Once large industries see the possible benefit to this, they start to move in, and like Constellation Brands, which is one of our biggest alcohol companies in the United States, is majorly involved in this now. And eventually, you're seeing it. I mean, you can already feel it, that at the state level, all these small little companies are getting set up, and there will be massive purchasing once the federal laws are all into place. People start buying them up.
Yeah, right. And in Vermont, we've tried to focus on allowing the little guys to get the licenses as well. So
let me ask a question. Because of this slaughtering capacity thing, and it gets all involved in the state inspection. There's legislation on the state meat inspection and the states that have state inspection versus federal. Has there been any look? I mean, is there enough capacity in our region that could support a medium-sized operation? Or are we basically looking at smaller, more mobile operations?
So what Vermont, I said in my little presentation that we have dedicated at least $500,000. 500,000 has been earmarked, but it could be more in funds to go to facilities. And in Vermont, we have an equal to meat processing program, so that we are at USDA standards, and USDA actually employs Vermont inspectors, and we get some revenue from that. We have plenty of kill floor capacity in Vermont, and others, please, raise your hands and we'll glad to hear from you. We have plenty of kill floor capacity, but we don't have the processing. And so the thought was we would dedicate, chunks of that 500,000 to facilities that could expand their processing capacity. And that would be a good use of funding. To set up a whole plant is difficult because it costs a lot of money. And, we travel down to Athol, Massachusetts to have our lambs done. So that's like an hour and 3/4, 2 hours to get down there, something like that. Anyway, that's the problem is where would you put it? Other states are not as necessarily fortunate as Vermont is, in that we have a bunch of facilities. I don't know what New Hampshire was at a while back. There weren't many at all. Bob, do you know, or one of the New Hampshire folks?
There are, I believe, 3 in New Hampshire. The other comment I'll make is Sarah Blood from Blood Farm did make the comment to us one day that New England, and she was talking about the 6-state region, needs 30 more kill bays to be have enough capacity.
And Bob, when she was talking about that, is that across species? Is that basically, or are we just talking cattle? Is that everything?
With the exception of birds.
Birds, yeah. We have. You can't throw our bird. We do have bird capacity pretty good in Delmarva. So.
Yeah. So what I'd like to do right now, number one, I want to pitch the rural broadband session for Thursday, which will be at 8 o'clock in the morning. That's August 19th. And I'm just going to read from the script that was given to me. The COVID-19 pandemic has increased the need for high-speed internet to our unserved areas. Inaccurate rural broadband data has been a major stumbling block for secure NG funding for broadband infrastructure build-out, but things are changing. Join our panel of experts in a discussion of what is happening to ensure that affordable high-speed internet is available to everyone. So that should be really interesting. I remember we had a seminar down in Wilmington a few years ago, and I learned several things. I like I've said before, I think that broadband and everything's just sort of magic. But number one, the mapping is terrible. Number two, no one wants to turn loose of data. They want to hold on to the data. And number three, they, what was the third one? Oh, they don't want to build out to the last mile. So I'm interested to hear how things have changed. And so we look forward to seeing you on Thursday morning at 8.
Carolyn, may I just add something? It's going to be really interesting because we have a speaker finally representing the FCC.
Oh, excellent.
And the fact that this new initiative coming to take away the responsibility and the authority for funding, distributing the funds from the FCC to Commerce is going to be really interesting to hear how he responds. So that should be fun. Okay.
Yeah, I would assume that his response is going to be, well, it's not law yet. But anyway, one thing I forgot to say is one of the lead senators on that provision was from our region, and that was Senator King from Maine, that moves it from the FCC to Commerce and the states, the funding.
Good, good, good. Now, I know that I'm really thrilled that we have 33 people on this Zoom meeting, and I'm wondering if there was anyone who didn't get a chance to speak from one of the states who would like to come make a comment or talk about briefly. Let's see, we have about 10 minutes left. Talk briefly about something that might be going on in your state that you forgot to mention, or I should open this up to other folks who haven't had a chance to comment, but anybody raise your hand. Okay, David, go ahead. David Waters.
Yeah, just a couple of quick things to follow up. Great report from Howard and good work this session. I just wanted to mention that we did pass some zoonotics disease monitoring legislation in New Hampshire. We also are finding ourselves in the lead in some ways on the PFAS issue. We set our ambient drinking water at 12 parts per trillion, which is about the lowest in the country. There was a lawsuit from some agricultural interests because of soils being spread from solid waste treatment, and that suit was not successful. So those standards are going in place, and it just, the PFAS issue, I think, is going to raise more and more issues for agriculture as the issue of these soils and the water runoff that can occur. And then finally, just because I have a seacoast district and I work a lot with marine issues, we really are seeing a lot of issues around warming waters and ocean acidification in terms of the viability of shellfish, and also some impacts on finfish as well. Gulf of Maine is the fastest warming body of water on the earth, just about. We've lost northern shrimp. Lobster may be next. And also this can create issues that come into closer inshore waters with harmful algal blooms. And of course, nitrogen runoff is increasingly regulated by the EPA. So, and that's very much related to climate issues as well. So I just wanted to mention a few things that I think will be on the horizon for a lot of states.
Yeah, thanks, David. I can confirm, I visited my sister who lives now in Kennebunk, and I actually got into the ocean, which typically I don't do in Maine, because it's so incredibly cold, the water is. But I would say it was at about 68 degrees. I went in last Wednesday. It was wonderful. I really enjoy swimming in the ocean, and it was tolerable. So anyway, it's warming up. Anything else anyone would like to add? I'm okay. Lori, go ahead. And you haven't spoken, so why don't you introduce yourself?
Yeah, I just wanted to introduce myself, but sorry I had to come a little late. I'm Lori Osher, representing Maine, Orono, Maine. And I missed Maggie O'Neill's presentation about what our Agriculture, Conservation, and Forestry Committee did this session, but we did great things. But I wanted to introduce myself to everyone and talk about my one bill, which was that we made a working group to investigate incentives for storing soil carbon. So we already had in the state a working group as part of our climate council for forest carbon storage. But in all of my evaluation of that, my dissertation research, my PhD research was in soil carbon storage in forests, in agriculture, and in grasslands, looking at how management can enhance carbon storage. So how land management. So my working group was to address the fact that the forest carbon storage really was just looking at above ground carbon storage, which is important, but it's not as long a residence time as soil carbon storage. So we have a working group that'll be starting up soon with economists and land managers and soil scientists to try to come up with an incentive proposal so that the next bill would be, this is how much we would give if you would store carbon, and how we would identify what you were doing to say that you have stored that carbon. So that's all I have to add. Nice to meet everyone virtually.
Great. Tara just chatted, and tomorrow between 2 and 3, I'll be moderating a panel on payments for ecosystem services. So, you know, if you can join us.
I'm certainly planning on it. And
Fantastic.
I attended your session in April about carbon storage. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. And good to meet you, Lori. I wish we were in person, but maybe next year. Anything else anyone wants to add? Judy.
I just wanted to say thank you to everybody as well. Carolyn, we have such a great turnout and I learned so much. And I've noticed in the chat, people are sharing links and, you know, things of interest in programs. That's really good. Lori, I'd love to hear more about, you know, what you're doing in Maine, and I hope you'll be in that session tomorrow. But I do want to add a thank you to the team behind the scenes here, both Bob and Tara, who helped to put together, you know, these panels and the sessions that we have, and the ones that happen in between the time of the conference that are so valuable. We don't get much in-service training as legislators, so I really appreciate their efforts, you know, and all the other folks that are making sure that our Zoom works. Just wanted to throw that in, Carolyn. Thank you.
Yeah, Judy, thank you so much for saying that. I totally agree. We really rely on Tara and Bob and all the Jack, Allison, Dylan, Yvette. So yeah, thank you everybody. And thanks for everyone who attended. We really appreciate it. And we hope to see you Thursday. If not, tomorrow at 2 to 3. So any last thought? All right, with that, I think we'll wrap this up and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks. Take care.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.